It's supposed to appropriate to say good morning, but it doesn't feel like it. But I am really grateful to be here with colleagues, municipal leaders, county leaders, and state leaders, and folks who work around the country and in our state to make sure our most vulnerable are taken care of. I want to thank Dr. Estate Lee and the Native American Community Clinic for hosting us. Over the last 2 weeks, Donald Trump has launched our country into chaos. He is under the illusion that being elected means he can rewrite our Constitution, stealing authority from Congress, and unilaterally rewriting our laws. This week, he came after the congressional power of the purse, trying to gut funding for Head Start, for Meals on Wheels, Medicaid, SNAP, and so many vital services that Minnesotans and the American people rely on. His announcement sent shockwaves of panic throughout our country. As news spread, our office received hundreds of calls from members of our community frightened about what this would mean for them. I heard from mothers and fathers about how this power grab would halt their child care, suspend healthcare services for their children with disabilities, and impact their ability to put food on the table. I heard from nonprofit leaders that the freeze would prevent them from helping our unhoused neighbors receive proper shelter. I heard from service members that stopping critical funding would impede our military's readiness. I heard the panic from organizations and clinics who have no idea if they could make the next payroll. I don't think Donald Trump cares about much this idea that would harm our country, including the very people who sent him to the White House, or how the American people would oppose it. Because of the public outrage, Donald Trump folded. We got our first win, and he had his first loss when they rescinded the memo. The American people saw right through the extremist decision. He's trying to steal resources that people have paid into and relied on in order to line the pockets of his millionaire and billionaire friends. Here in Minnesota, $1.8 billion of federal funding are on the table. Funding that goes to law enforcement, assistance to farmers, schools, veterans, healthcare, medical research, and countless other areas that make our country function. What is clear from this week is that we have to stay vigilant. We can't let Trump and Republicans normalize something like this, because we know Trump wants to cause a constitutional crisis. He wants to test how far we will let him go. He wants to get his illegal actions in front of the Supreme Court so that they can help him gut our constitutional rights. We have to be ready to fight back, just like we did this week, because submission is how you get dictatorship. And we know this is just the start. Donald Trump has made it clear he is coming after Medicaid, food stamps, child care funding, and so many programs our communities rely on. He's coming after the checks and balances written into our Constitution. We won this fight, but it's not over. He and his administration will find other avenues to achieve their agenda. That's why we have to keep raising the alarm, fighting back against corruption, chaos, and reckless actions of this administration. Just yesterday, Donald Trump said he has common sense, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't. Well, I ask, where is the common sense in gutting health clinics, closing down Head Start? Where is the common sense in stopping programs that are turning the tide on the opioid pandemic? We will continue to show him that what common sense is all about, taking care of our neighbors and fighting for policies that uplift our communities. we will tell our colleagues on the other side of the aisle that we hope that they speak up before it is too late. I hope that they put their constituents above loyalty to the president who doesn't care about them. Because he is not only coming for my constituents, he is coming for them. It is time for them to stop being cowards, to uphold their oath, and to stand up to Donald Trump on behalf of this country, their constituents, and our Constitution. Thank you, and with that, I would love to introduce the Mayor of Minneapolis, Mayor Jacob.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for bringing us all together around this critical issue, which really should not see a partisan divide. We are talking about a constitutional crisis right now, and this president is violating the Constitution in a number of different respects. Immediately when he took office, and by the way, we're only talking about a couple weeks now, he's trying to get rid of birthright citizenship, trying to terrorize new Americans and immigrants. And just the other day, I received a letter on my desk saying that approximately $54 million worth of funding that goes towards really critical city service was being cut. And let me juxtapose what's happening in this letter versus what normally happens when a new administration takes office. We have seen shifts between presidents. We have seen shifts between a Democratic administration and a Republican administration. We've even seen changes, and I've been in office for a previous Trump administration. This is something entirely different, even from when Trump was in office the first time. Previously, sure, maybe some programs will be changed in a way that we don't exactly like. Yes, at times there are some funding sources that are reallocated to a slightly different division, but for the same general topic area. That happens, you can expect that. But what this letter that I received from the Office of Management and Budget said is that we're stopping all of it. Pencils down. We're done with critical services to help people that are experiencing homelessness. We're done with important monies for affordable housing. We're done with workforce development. We're done with emergency management. We're even taking away important resources that can go for protecting people when a bomb is threatened. I mean, come on. When you are talking about getting rid of the money to protect people from when a bomb is placed, this is getting kind of ridiculous. Only to be changed a couple of days later by kind of maybe sort of rescinding some of the actions that he just took place. Here's the bottom line. These actions are being taken to sow chaos in our country. They are being taken to sow chaos in our cities. We can't succumb to that chaos, and we can't succumb to fear. It's on all of us to remain steady and stable. It's on all of us to make sure that we're adhering to these overarching constitutional principles, which, by the way, we know are on our side. Look, the city's got to be the government that doesn't shut down. We have to be the government that continues to provide these services no matter what. And let me assure every constituent out there in Minneapolis, we're going to. That being said, what's happening right now makes it a whole lot harder. It causes uncertainty where we should have a full understanding of what's before us. And Chief O'Hara, in just a few minutes, is going to give a rundown of what this means for basic safety services as well. It's problematic, and as the Congresswoman said, we all should be speaking up against it. This should not be a Democrat or Republican issue. When someone is not adhering to the basic foundational principles of the Constitution, we all should be speaking up, and this should not be an exception to that rule.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we will hear from Dr. Anthony Stately, Executive Officer and President of NAC. Next, we will hear the Chief of Minneapolis Police Department, Brian O'Hara.
Thank you, Congresswoman Omar. Thank you, Mayor Fry. So I am here just to try and educate the community about both the level of federal funding and how any loss of that would potentially impact public safety in the city. Obviously, the people of Minneapolis have been through a lot over the last 5 years, and our community has been dealing with unacceptably high levels of crime and violence at a time that the police department has been significantly depleted. And while I do believe that we have now turned a corner and we have made significant progress reducing crime while we're restoring trust with our residents and rebuilding the police force, people need to know that this success is very fragile. We depend very greatly on our partnerships, and that includes both community-based organizations that we work with, as well as law enforcement partners, including federal law enforcement. Our progress would not be possible without the dedication and the resilience of the heroic officers who stayed here and endured very real challenges over the last few years. But it also would not be possible without those partnerships, particularly with the federal government. And that includes the level of federal grant funding that we receive. Federal support has been instrumental in helping to drive some of the progress that we've had. The federal grant funding that we receive directly impacts public safety in this city. It impacts violence reduction as well as community trust rebuilding efforts. The critical funds support programs that reduce crime, rebuild the ranks of the department, and restore pride in this profession. These grant funds supplement not only the important programs that we provide, but in some cases, the very people that are necessary to implement them. Just to highlight some of the federal grants that we receive so that the community is aware, one is called HIDA, it's the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. That's money to help target and dismantle drug trafficking and money laundering organizations, which are often connected to violence in the city. One regards the bomb disposal grant. It provides funding for specialized equipment and x-ray that's necessary for bomb detection and removal, and it is absolutely critical in a city like Minneapolis, where we have so much critical infrastructure and so many important venues that are potentially targets. We have the Edwin Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant, the JAG grant, which can be used very broadly for violence reduction and law enforcement efforts, whether it's hate crime or community-based violence intervention programs. We have the COPS Community Policing Development Awards, which aids in officer recruitment and workforce diversification, and also has been funding the city's 30 by 30 initiative to increase the representation of women as police officers. We have the Department of Transportation's Towards Zero Death program, which helps us target and reduce serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways. The PEACE, Pathways Encouraging Active Community Engagement program, which helps support internships with young people that has been helpful to try and rebuild the police force. So these are just a few of the many federal programs that are absolutely essential to our residents. And the impact of these funds is just undeniable. We are confident that the purposes and outcomes of these programs could withstand any scrutiny. And so we urge the federal government to continue this funding without interruption, to honor the commitments that have been made to the people of this city and this police department as we continue to try and move forward. I believe the MPD is on a path of making meaningful transformation, and we are absolutely committed to continuing that work. With the continued support of all of our local, state, and federal partners, we will continue to do everything that we can to reduce crime and restore the quality of life for our residents. We appreciate the support and collaboration of our elected officials, community leaders, and public safety agencies as we continue to navigate this critical juncture. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I'm really grateful to everybody who joined us today, who's raising the alarm and addressing some of the confusion that we have seen. Our country feels chaotic, but it is intentional, and it's going to take each one of us to make sure that we have the right resources to provide to people, that we have the right information to give to our communities, and that we continue to resist the kind of damage that Trump and his administration want to cause to our state and to our country. So with that, we'll take some questions if any of you have any.
Congresswoman, do you have any sense that this memo is a one-off, or that these are going to continue and these chaotic fires and events are going to happen? And if so, have you and your DC colleagues gotten together and talked about, I mean, is this going to be a weekly put out the fires, or do you have any other kind of strategies to combat what's going on?
I mean, the intent of what Trump is doing is to have us respond every week, if not every day. We have seen, just even with the plane crash, the plane collision that happened in Washington D.C. that came right after he fired the director of the FAA. You know, he puts out a press conference blaming former presidents when we've had shortage for many years, and we've been fighting our Republican colleagues to try to get enough resources to make sure that we had air traffic controllers, enough so. And it's been clear that because of that shortage, because there was only one person working in both directions, that it made it really hard for them to have the right kind of information. We know that after the memo was rescinded in the funding freeze, and after, you know, with the help of our AG and other 21 AGs across the Democratic AGs across the country, won that case by a federal judge in Rhode Island. They put out something that said, you know, go through the list of funding and find us what is obligatory and what we can delay. So we know that they are hell-bent on making sure that the American people suffer and that we are destabilized as we scramble to try to figure out, you know, what we take to court, what we could figure out how to hold up in regards to legislation. But ultimately, this is about the expansion of presidential powers. It is the dismantling of what our Constitution says in regards to the balance of power. And we have to make it plain and clear to the American people that they did not come to office to lower the cost of eggs. They did not come to office to lower the cost of gas prices. They came to office to line their pockets and the pockets of their friends. We saw at inauguration who was placed front and center. It was billionaires, right? We know that the tax cuts that are being proposed are going to help billionaires. When he talks about tariffs on Canada, trade just alone between Minnesota and Canada is $22 billion. In my own district, it's $600 million. That is impact across our state that's going to be devastating to the people that we serve that are already pinching pennies to make their lives work. When you talk about community health clinics, the people that are being serviced are people who don't have enough resources, enough money to be able to seek health care in a private clinic. These are people who are not turned away if they walk through that door and are seeking help. My grandfather, my father, myself, at some point, were those people who couldn't really afford to pay for health care, but got those services. That is who he is going after. When Rochelle talks about rural clinics and Representative Emma Greenman talks about, NAC is not going to be the first one to go. Cook Clinic might not be the first one to go. People's Center might not be the first one to go. But it will be in Winona. It will be in Rochester. So we have to be very clear that the people who are representing collectively the constituents of this country have to stand up for the most vulnerable. And this is not, again, like I said, this is not the time to cower. This is a time to remember the oath that we took. It is a time to remember the separations of powers that are enshrined in our Constitution. It is time to remember why we are elected to serve the incredible people of this amazing country. And it's time to stand up to Trump.
I have a question for both of you.
Okay.
you have colleagues on the politically other side of the aisle. I haven't been called to any press conferences to talk about their constituents. What can you review? What can you tell me about what is going on with them that you feel safe to talk about or say?
I don't know, and I won't speak for Representative Greenman because they haven't fully organized the House in the Minnesota legislature yet. But for us, it's been really quite disappointing. It's been quite disappointing. Not only are they not speaking up, they are defending. And when they defend and say, you know, the president has the right to carry out his agenda. No, he does not. If the president wants to carry out his agenda, he needs to carry it out with his own budget proposal. The budget that we are currently governing under is the continued resolution. It is the policies that the Biden administration, Democrats and Republicans, in a bipartisan way, passed into law. What the president can do between now and March is carry out the budget that we passed, that was signed into law. Now, when we are up again to work on a new budget, they can put all kinds of things in the reconciliation and see if they have the numbers, to see if their members are brave enough to put their vote on the line for cuts to Head Start, to cuts to Medicaid, to cuts to Social Security, to cuts to addressing the opioid crisis, to cuts in reducing crime in our communities, to cuts in making sure police don't have the proper resources to address bomb threats in our communities after what we witnessed in New Orleans. Let them put their votes up on the board and let the American people see that this is what Republican priority is, and this is how they want to govern for them. Do not hide in line items. Do not come for our constitutional right to dictate, as members of Congress, what what funding will look like. Right? Do not sidestep the work that we have already run, the work that we've already done. That is a coward way to govern. We are not going to allow him to expand his executive powers.
Thank you.
I will just answer for the state, because what I know, as we are in a tie, is that the places where there's the most common ground, if you look at the past, are places like mental health, healthcare, veteran services. These are places where when we pass budgets, they have broad bipartisan support because people know, all of my colleagues know, that folks need healthcare. And we may differ on how we should make it more affordable, but everybody believes people should have health care. When we talk about mental health and the mental health crisis that's happening, or our public schools, I don't hear any of the 201 legislators saying what we want is less people on health care, poor kids not eating. And so I welcome you to ask them how they're dealing with it, because I know for a fact, given how much we're hearing, folks in every corner of the state are reaching out. And so if any legislator tells you they haven't heard, it's because they are not listening. And so I hope, and I really believe, if people are asking what's best for the 5 million folks in Minnesota, they will say with us, they will condemn what Trump has done. They will say it's time for this federal government to get back to work, figuring out how to actually ensure that we're keeping costs down, to actually ensure that we have an economy that works for folks. And so please ask all of our colleagues what they are doing, how their folks are being impacted, and what they will do to stand up for Minnesotans and Minnesota, because it's absolutely critical. And as Congressman Omar says, this isn't a partisan issue, but we need both parties. We need every person to be committed to fighting for Minnesotans.
Thank you.
Thank you.